So we're going to do a few things. First off, thank you very much, everybody, for being here and taking your time on this Friday afternoon during the holidays to hear about this important issue. The league has been very active on addressing Oregon's addiction and livability crisis, and we've entered into uh, a plan with some of our public safety partners. The Oregon League of Oregon Cities is a member of a group called the Oregon Law Enforcement Leadership Forum, and this is an organization that consists of the four organizations that you see on the head letterhead of the recommendation plan, as well as state police, corrections, community corrections, the OIA, DPSST, Criminal Justice Commission, basically any agency that has a piece of protecting Oregonians is a part of this group. And what happened was we sort of locked ourselves in a room at Sun River for a day in October, and we hammered out an agreement. And it was an agreement that sort of outlined what we think should happen. And this really isn't just about Measure 110. Measure 110 is part of the conversation, but this was really about building a response to Oregon's addiction crisis that works. It is not like what we had before. It is certainly not like what we have now. And so that was the intention. And all of the organizations, all four of us, the chiefs, the sheriffs, the DAs, and the league, and the other partners around the table, we all agreed that you can't incarcerate your way out of the addiction crisis. That is not a solution that's going to be viable. What we can do is introduce some ways to vector people into treatment, into getting better, and that is the heart of this plan. You'll hear me say this, and you may have seen some public quotes on this, say that we do create entrances into the criminal justice system, but those entrances come with exits as well. And so with that, I'm going to go through the 11 recommendations. I'm also going to talk a little bit about a document that came out yesterday from the district attorneys that was specific to dealing with dealers. So we define dealers for this conversation as someone who is engaged in a predatory conduct to distribute narcotics. So we're not talking about a couple of people who may pool money because they're suffering from addictions. We're talking about a predatory dealer. So with that, I'm going to get into what these recommendations do, and then how to address some of our dealer issues, and then we'll talk about our action plan. And the action plan is going to be quite a bit different than your standard LOC alert, where we'd simply ask you to text, email, or call your legislator. And so the first one of these 11 recommendations, and keep in mind, these 11 recommendations, they work as a set. They're not a laundry list. When we talk about, we're going to talk first about reintroducing an A misdemeanor for possession, but that's also linked to some other things in the plan that we'll see a little bit later on. So I will ask to hold questions until we see the recommendations in totality. And so the first option is to reclassify possession of a controlled substance from an E violation to an A misdemeanor. And this is pretty important. And the way we want this done is different than other A misdemeanors. So first, because of our constitutional protections and our Bill of Rights, it's very difficult for officers to take anything from an individual. And an E violation doesn't create a sufficient government interest for an officer to initiate contact, ask for a consent search, or to seize an item, even if that item is contraband or is narcotics. And so in order for police officers to actually seize drugs, there has to be a governmental interest, and that governmental interest is at the A misdemeanor level. And so under the current statute, if someone is in possession of a small amount of narcotics, it's an E violation, but the officer really can't seize the drugs. And they're limited to what options they have in front of them in order to help vector that person into a treatment or a diversion plan. And so this is the first step. Part of reclassifying to an A misdemeanor is to add multiple opportunities for a person to enter into diversion. Diversion is a system that's monitored by the court that allows the defendant to go through treatment, complete a plan, and at the conclusion of that plan, that arrest and conviction would then be expunged from the record, and so they wouldn't have those hindrances in seeking employment or rental contracts and that sort of thing. This is somewhat controversial in the building right now. But it is one of the key components of this plan that would allow police officers to and cities to intervene and protect both people who are suffering from addiction in their communities and in the safety issues. The second point of the plan, and we'll see a little bit more about this in the ODA and the district attorney's document on dealing with dealers, is to fix what's called the Boyd-Hubbell problem. Boyd-Hubbell is the name of a court decision that made it very, very difficult for police and prosecutors to bring cases against people who were distributing large amounts of narcotics. The issue was under the current statute, or under the current court interpretation, people with large amounts of cash and drugs and even records of sales, that's insufficient to actually prove that they were intending to distribute narcotics. So we need the fix for this. In 2015, Oregon had about 1,100 convictions for DCS, distribution of a controlled substance. Last I checked, we were at about 220-ish. So that's not because people stopped dealing drugs. So being able to interdict that supply is part of the plan. Again, we can't interdict our way out of the addiction crisis, but it is a part of the overall picture. The other piece of this is to modify the pretrial holds for people who are arrested for dealing. If it's a community priority, even if it's a community priority, someone who's arrested for distribution of a controlled substance could be out on their own recognizance or on bail fairly quickly. It's important to be able to hold somebody who is charged with these offenses in order to protect their customers. So for instance, particularly in the smaller community where you may not have a large number of people engaged in this conduct, holding that dealer does put some stress on a person who is suffering from addiction, and that is an opportunity to help get that person into peer support, into a detox, into a stabilization, into treatment, or to help them get that moment of clarity to get some help. And so this is a very important component of the plan. The fourth point that we're looking for is to fund county probation departments to supervise misdemeanor theft and property crimes where there's an addiction issue or addiction component to that crime. And what we know from some fairly reputable sources is that well over half, and probably closer to 3/4 of property crimes are committed as a result of or to fund drug addiction. And the things people do to fund their addictions can be fairly dreadful. But a lot of these offenses aren't eligible for post-trial or supervision and community correction response. So that means that a person may commit a fairly significant theft or some other offense, be drug addicted and not be eligible for treatment through community correction. So that's something we're trying to fix, is to make sure that a person has the services, community correction services, that will help them get into a program, get better over time. And it's a fairly significant ask. However, unfortunately, the last legislature, community corrections budgets were cut, and that ended up resulting in loss of treatment opportunities and treatment beds for people suffering from addiction. And we're seeking to correct that. It's about a $32 million ask last I checked. The fifth issue is um, something that we've heard a lot about in the metro area and in all parts of Oregon, is to make public use of a controlled substance an offense. It actually just aligns public use of marijuana and alcohol. Currently, those activities are prohibited, but use of fentanyl, meth, other hard drugs is not. My understanding is the governor fully expects to see a public use bill on her desk this session. We're in good shape on this piece of it, but this would also address a lot of the community safety, livability issues that we've heard from the members as well. The sixth proposal we're talking about today if you saw the TriMet report about the amount of fentanyl, meth, and narcotics that were parts per million that were found on their buses, this originated with TriMet and the transit agencies. But the concern we had is that if you outlaw public use, which I wouldn't call it a consensus, but close to it for doing so, it creates the impression that there is in place that's okay for these items to be used. The proposal that was recommended out of the group from Olaf was that if you're using in a controlled space and it endangers another person, that be an offense. That would start out at an A misdemeanor, but elevate to a C felony for repeated conduct. There's some very unfortunate examples of people becoming intoxicated and ill or injured from someone using fentanyl or another high potent similar narcotic in an enclosed space. I believe we had an officer in Newburgh who was made ill as he investigated a crime in a apartment laundry room where someone was using and had to be had ended up in the emergency room. So this is an issue where we're looking to fix, especially as we're talking about conduct that endangers another human being. So that's part of it. And this is the core. These are the criminal justice, the public safety components of the plan. But now we're going to move on to the treatment and more to the community focused solutions. The first is policy proposal 7 is to prioritize the adequate sustainable funding of Oregon specialty courts. This is to include assistance for cities to develop their own specialty courts. We do have some that are either operating now or will be opening soon. Beaverton is operating a behavioral health court and a stay sober court for their DUI offenses. It works pretty well, and we believe cities should have that opportunity to establish their own specialty courts. This is a court that doesn't operate like you would normally see in a standard trial court. This is an area where someone is receiving bench supervision from the judge as they go through their treatment plan. There's our incentives. There's an understanding that people relapse. But it helps people get better. This is a system that works, and it works fairly well in terms of its success rate in keeping people off of getting people into recovery. So that is an important aspect of all of this. So even if somebody ends up in taking a charge, this is one of the key ways to help someone get out of that situation, to go through a plan, get into recovery, get healthy, and get on with their life. The 8th proposal is, I almost think we should have listed this one as number 1. This is incredibly important for addressing the immediate crisis that we're experiencing, and that is to establish authority for a welfare hold for 72 hours. Currently, if a person is intoxicated to the point they're a danger to themselves or others, They can attend or be taken to a sobering facility in the highly unlikely event that there's one available in the community that you're in. They can be held for 24 hours in a sobering facility as the drugs or alcohol typically leaves the system. If they gone to a treatment facility, that hold can extend to 48 hours. So we're asking for a 72-hour hold. Important to note here, the officer doesn't determine the length of the hold. The treatment facility or the sobering center would. So all the officer determines is that the individual is intoxicated to the point where they are a danger to themselves or others and need a place to go. This is also a jail diversion tool. And so it is envisioned that an officer doesn't necessarily need to charge with an AMIS for some of those other offenses we've talked about, but they could take a person to this facility and they can go through, stay there for up to 72 hours, get connected with services, start the treatment, go through withdrawals. One of the reasons with the 72-hour hold and why we wanted to extend beyond the current statutory allowance is that the drugs on the street now those withdrawal symptoms do last longer. And so 72 tends to get someone into a better place as opposed to if you release them in 48 hours, they're still going through some very difficult withdrawal symptoms. But this is a key. There is a startling and disturbing lack of detox and stabilization centers in the state. Most counties in Oregon do not have the service available to them, although we do see some coming online in the next year or two. And then Proposal 9 is a funding ask. We want to create the adequate stabilization, detoxification, and treatment capacity. This would be a significant funding ask going into February. It's going to take a lot of political capital to accomplish this, and probably a shift in some of those $110 as well. The 10th point of this plan would be to support the establishment of an overdose quick response teams. This was something the chiefs had brought to the group. Tucson has a plan in where it seems to me it's almost cobbled together with peer support, police officers, firefighters, their EMS system, whoever's available can go in and check on people who've had a Narcan. Narcan is the overdose rescue drug. After someone's had a treatment of that, so they've come back from an overdose, it's in that 24 hours, it's critical that they're going to do one of two things. One, that person's either going to go into drug seeking behavior or they're going to get into treatment. And so the idea of a quick response team for those folks is not a criminal justice response. It's how do we help you? How do we help you survive this and get into a program? It's a remarkably low cost plan service with some very high results. And the 11th point of this plan is we have to align the siting process of secure housing facilities with the requirements of the Fair Housing Act. There are simply not enough secure facilities in Oregon for people to enter into to get treatment now. This was proved to be some controversial in the last legislature, but every service provider, I think every county will tell you there's simply the process for siting a secure facility is too onerous, and they've lost opportunity, and many communities have lost opportunities for these very beneficial facilities to be sited in their community. And also there's a liability risk as the Federal Fair Housing Act doesn't allow a state or a local government to place any special restrictions on a group home setting that they wouldn't on a similarly situated property. And so that is going to be that is part of building capacity for treatment, is to make sure that this can be done in as efficient a way as possible. State hospital can't hold people right now because of the Mossman decision, and there aren't enough community beds in the state currently. And so what you're seeing here and what I've just presented, it's certainly, this goes well beyond the four corners of Measure 110, but based on the multiple disciplines in the room, this is a system that we think will improve and help address the ongoing addiction crisis in the state. The legislature has formed a committee to look at this, as you would have seen in the bulletin, in our bulletin. We expect that the legislature in February will take this matter up and see some legislation to address the problem. We know that the polls say that Oregonians do not believe that the state is going in the right direction. In our response, we believe that it would be better to address this legislatively than to allow this to, I mean, the voters are going to do what they're going to do. But we need to take this up in February, and the league is going to be there. This plan was endorsed by the league's legislative committee. We're lobbying it effectively. We're lobbying it actively right now with our partners, and we hope to see this through. And with that, I am happy to take questions on the plan before we get into the other components of the meeting. Yes, we will send out these. We are going to send out the slide deck. This is also available on the website now, but we'll send it out. Yeah. And so I'll just go with the hands as I see them. Victoria Doyle from Springfield.
Thank you so much. And I'm a Springfield City Councilor, and we are one of the cities that actually has our own jail, and our judge was able to procure funds to start a drug court. We're super excited about that. That's going to be happening in 2024, and we've seen throughout the country that it's something that people are moving towards, so we're really excited about that happening. But I am just really grateful to hear that somebody's talking about this, because I'm on the Human Services Commission board here with Lane County, and it is all about housing. Like, that seems to be all we talk about, is housing and the lack of housing and getting people into homes. And I have been banging my head against the wall saying, I appreciate that, I understand that, but if we don't deal with the underlying issues, which is drug addiction and mental health issues, I don't see how all the housing is going to work. So I'm just super grateful to see this, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about it.
And Mayor Dropkin.
Thank you so much. I'm also really happy to see this list of proposals. I think that they are logical and well planned, and happy to support the joint efforts here. I am wondering on the last point of the citing of secure facilities, of what your talking points are going to be when the opposition that you will get will be that you are putting sex offenders into residential areas, because that right now we even deal with that in terms of when people see unhoused folks on the street and they immediately say or assume without any fact that there are sex offenders. And so my question is, what will your response be on that point?
So that's an excellent question. Thank you, Mayor. And the proposal would be to align the citing of secure facilities with the Fair Housing Act. The Fair Housing Act does not provide any protection to an individual who is a sex offender or presents, whether they're convicted or not, or poses a threat to the public. What the Fair Housing Act says is that the home siting can't be subject to any additional restrictions than you would for a similarly property. So if you couldn't say if the requirement was you had to have X number of parking for a house of, or a water meter for a house that was designed for, say, 11 people, that's fine. That they have to be a certain distance from something that is not within the Fair Housing Code, Fair Housing Act. The way a sex offender is cited is the individual is assessed through the Community Corrections Department of Corrections, and based on their threat. And so we're not changing any of that. The Department of Corrections, as they do now, will determine if where that person should be located. It's not, we're not looking to allow that person to be cited someplace where they'd be inappropriate. We would be looking for corrections and community corrections to do their risk assessment and place that individual appropriately. This is about aligning the process with the current federal law. Yeah, that came up in the session, and it was I think it was unfortunate. And some of the language that was brought up was about 1,000-foot buffer, which I don't know what 3 city blocks does in terms of as a hurdle for somebody, but it also and I also add that the proposal, we're talking about licensed facilities, and so the restrictions on security, staffing, training for the staffing, that is all part of the licensing for these homes as well. So I hope that answered it. And Mayor Graham.
Yes. So thank you, Scott. One of my questions kind of comes back to that link between mental illness and addiction. And so in addition to not having the sobering places, we also don't have places for people who are suffering mental illness, but don't rise to the level of needing an emergency room yet, can go and settle. And I know they have one in Deschutes County that is really incredibly useful. And I wonder if that sort of element also needs to be integrated here in terms of those sobering facilities. Is there a way to sort of combine those two things? Because so many places, that mix of mental illness and addiction they're one and the same. They're so tightly linked.
Sure. Building the capacity is certainly part of the proposal, but also one of the few things the legislature did on this issue in the 23 session was to ensure that 110 money could go to facilities where there's a dual diagnosis, where you have someone who is sort of self-medicating a behavioral health issue with drugs or alcohol, and so that would be part of it. I think we want sort of a wide filter on this so that anybody who needs help gets it. And again, just going down my list, Councillor Wolf from Tigard.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate the document, and it just seems, I'm sure that was a packed full day compiling this together, so definitely support it. My question is about number 9, and absolutely in favor of that. My lens into this comes more from a K-12 funding perspective, that short sessions typically aren't a lot of monetary fixes. So just curious if you have a sense that because this is such a critical component for Oregon right now, that those dollars are going to be found, or this will hopefully be somewhat of a bridge to then 25. It's such a critical issue. So really supported, but just curious about our hope in getting dollars in 24.
I think we do have hope for getting appropriations funded in February. We don't expect them to be we don't expect a multi-$100-million ask. We would expect a seed money. We would expect something moving forward, and then again, come back to this in 25. This isn't going to be the last time the legislature talks about this. So I think we'll be on this. This won't be the last time I'll send out an asking you all to show up to a webinar either, I suspect. Thank you. Mr. Corbett from Pendleton.
Yeah, just a comment. I appreciate the work that you've done and the recognition linking mental health with addiction and homelessness. I'm struck by the fact that we lead the nation in failure to address mental health issues in Oregon, and I feel it is imperative that the Oregon Health Authority lead with a plan to correct that problem. And I'd like to see the League of Oregon Cities and Counties pressing the state of Oregon to put together a plan that reverses that reality.
Point is well taken. Councillor Brooks.
Thank you for your work and presentation. My question is kind of similar to before me as well. As a social worker, I'm pretty clear about the lack of infrastructure here in Oregon, not only with treatment beds and facilities, but also with staffing. And so my question is, with the proposal 9 for capacity building, what kind of plan is that? And similarly to the trouble that we have with mental health and behavioral health, will there be efforts to bring in like the National Association of Social Workers and other mental health and behavioral health care people to help endorse a measured approach?
We are working with that with the treatment community, and I'll point out the legislature made some significant investments in 21 and 23 to address the Oregon's historical lack of behavioral health care access. Workforce investment was a key component of that. We didn't get here quickly, and we're not going to get out of the hole quickly, but I think that the progress is ongoing, and we are certainly monitoring.
Yeah, I just think that having some healthcare people involved with this would help bridge the gap of perspective taking, so that people can feel assured that we're going in that direction, and that people in this field have looked at it as well. Thanks.
And so I'm going to take one more question before I move on to the other document, because we do want to get to the action plan, and I did promise this was an hour. So the question from Mike Riley in the chat on numbers. I know the numbers on community corrections ask. That was actually pretty easy. We just want to restore the cut. On the other proposals, you mentioned, we're going to do as best we can on those numbers for now, and any improvement would be welcome. I think to put it in scale for the community courts, particularly for municipal courts, Beaverton's, they operate on about a $230,000 budget for their behavioral health court. So that's sort of the scale we're looking at for a city of that size for muni court. But we don't have a dollar amount yet, but we're going to do our best but we don't expect a comprehensive full funding for February. We'd expect to get started. And so with that, I'm going to move on to the additional document, and that is stop sharing for just a minute. Okay, and so this is what we call the dealer addendum. I'm going to burn through this pretty quickly because and just give the highlights. This has not been gone through our internal processes yet. Like I said, I got this yesterday, but does include a couple of things we talked about in the previous document. And the first one is we need to address the fact that Oregon police and prosecutors do not have sufficient tools to address people who engage in distribution, delivery of a controlled substance, particularly even if it's predatory conduct. And so what we're looking at are a few enhancements. One is there's a current prohibition statute that enhances delivery if it's within 1,000 feet of a school. We want to expand that to ensure that a person convicted of distribution within 1,000 feet of a treatment center, parks, shelters, places where they're preying on people who are vulnerable, that person receives a sentencing enhancement. There's some horrific stories of people who have come back from Narcan and been immediately sold drugs even in the emergency room. So addressing that is going to be critical. Additionally, again, we're going to talk about the Boyd-Hubble fix that we talked about in the original document. There is a desire among a lot of the partners in this core conversation to address what happens when dealing leads to death. And so this is called a Len bias law that's named after a federal case law. And we're talking about situations in which a person sells either tainted, adulterated product, or they're selling in a predatory way, and it leads to a fatality. We're not talking about a scenario where somebody is, a couple of people end up pooling money for a hit, and there's a fatality. That's not the behavior we're looking at. We're looking at someone who is engaged, who is a true predator in this case. There's also some technical issues, and I frankly don't even fully grasp all of it as it relates to sentencing levels, depending on the amount of pills or the amount of product that somebody has. We also don't have a fentanyl specific statute. Fentanyl really wasn't on the scene when Measure 110 was passed. It showed up afterwards. And the DAs would like this to be treated the same way we do other specific drugs. So you have drugs for specific offenses for ecstasy, for hydrocodone, heroin. Fentanyl just needs to be on the list. And the final piece is some technical languages for the attorneys as it relates to the phrasing of the statute, improving what involved means when it comes to proving a case that somebody was actually had these drugs, had this money, had these guns, had these records, and they were engaged in distribution. We're going to run this through our process. That's not something the league can endorse quite yet, but we'll be taking it running it through our committee process and get an official position. And the final piece is creating a specific offense if you're taking a tabulating encapsulating machine to produce illicit drugs. This may seem like a technical issue, but it's actually pretty important to our current crisis. If somebody is adulterating a drug with fentanyl or another substance, they're using these sorts of machines in order to do that. So making sure that's an offense is an important part of addressing our dealing crisis. And I'll take just a couple of questions on the dealer piece, if there are any. And then we're going to get into the action plan. Okay. Not seeing any. And so we're going to ask city leaders to do some things we haven't done, we don't normally do. Like normally when we send out an alert, I'm just asking that you text or email or call your legislator and say, please vote X way. I think we're looking at something that's a little more a strategic plan, if you will. And we're asking for basically five steps. Is first, again, read through the comprehensive plan. We're going to send this out. We're going to send this out membership wide again this afternoon, and understand and become familiar with these issues. You're welcome to call the league. You're welcome to talk to, I think your police chiefs, your sheriffs, your DAs probably happy to talk to you about this. They are our partners in this endeavor, and answer any questions and really become familiar with it. And that's going to be your important first step. The second one is we want you to convey that recommendation, the support for the recommendations to your legislator. And this isn't an email. We're asking, do a meeting with your legislator, take them on a tour, show them an area of your community that's been drug impacted, let them talk to business leaders or neighborhood associations who have been negatively impacted by our addiction crisis. And and this is an opportunity to explain that because of the way 110 was crafted and the types of services cities provide, there aren't a lot of things cities can do directly to alleviate this problem. We're in a position of having to rely on the state, other units of government, the nonprofit agencies to conduct the outreach and to try to vector people into a treatment. But because of the structuring, we don't provide behavioral health. We're safety agencies. And so helping them understand that we're looking to be part of a solution here is got to be part of this conversation. And so this is something that I don't think is conveyed easily in an email. I think this is a meeting, and this is a bigger conversation. And the third step is sort of build a local coalition, and speak with your other local government leaders, your school boards, if you have fire districts, your county commissioners, DAs, your sheriffs, as well as your neighborhood associations, your service clubs, your chambers, and explain to them what you're advocating for and what we're asking the legislature to do, and ask them that they do likewise. I think we've seen letters from the business community come out in the last couple of hours to ask the legislature to address this as well. They're not as specific as what we've developed, which is understandable. This is our discipline, not theirs. But helping them get behind this and reach out to the legislature as well, so they're hearing this from multiple voices. The fourth step is we need you to talk to your local media. This is I think this is pretty critical right now. I think we have a lot of opportunity. There are legislators who want to do something. I think it's certainly a hot story among journalists. And it also lets them and your communities know that you're being proactive about this topic. And it's an opportunity to explain the intricacies and the challenges that you're seeing as a city. And then to just tell your story, tell them what you hear from your citizens, what you see on a daily basis in your communities. And that's, in keeping a steady drumbeat of that is going to be very helpful for us going into February to get these changes. And the fifth step is report your progress, and we'll do likewise. Secondly, if you hear from a legislator, you're hearing feedback from legislators, it's really helpful if you let us know. What you're doing in the city translates to votes on the floor. And then you'll also be hearing from me both through our normal communications channel, the bulletin, the weekly calls during session, but also directly if I hear that a legislator might need additional outreach in their cities, you'll definitely hear from us and to get that moving forward. And so that is that is what we're asking legislators, city leaders to do. 110, addressing the shortcomings of 110 was a priority going into 2023. We accomplished a few things with the administrative fixes, but I think we're now in a better position to get true substantive changes and investments into this system. But it is going to take a big lift from not just your lobby team, but city leaders on the ground as well. And so from there, I am happy to take any questions, comments, discussion. So we covered everything. Okay, then. Well, again, I appreciate. No, thank you, Councilor Wolf. I appreciate you taking the time. This is a unique situation in Oregon's history that I've never seen an issue shift so quickly and the politics change so rapidly and public sentiment change so rapidly. So I don't know what the next few months hold. I've seen that the proponents of 110 are up on the air on social media with some ads, some of which I do have some questions about the accuracy of. But we're not going to have millions of dollars from an outside entity to help defend this. We're going to have city leaders talking to the legislators in their communities and advocating in a passionate way. That's how we're going to. That's our best shot. So I'm going to give it a last call on questions and comments.
Scott, will this information will be our 5-part plan will be sent to us, you said? Or
we're going to send out a member alert this afternoon with that information and the 5 steps, the 11 points, and ask. And I'm not sure how long it's going to be before we'll have the video or a copy of this webinar out, but we're going to send that out as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, well, we did that in under an hour. Thank you again, everybody. I'm very grateful for you taking the time and just checking the chat. And all right. Enjoy your afternoon, everyone, and happy holidays.